Internet pranksters are possibly one of the most reviled groups on the entire internet, with massive YouTubers like H3 Productions getting their start by covering the antics of these individuals.
I'm joking. Yo, please, go ahead.
You savages! Can you not take a joke? Am I not human? Am I not entitled to tell a joke in the form of physical assault?
Even today, there's no shortage of cloud-hungry streamers getting called out for harassing innocent bystanders and being a general nuisance to society. While all of these loathed influencers have different motivations, the one thing they all have in common is their desire to draw as much attention to themselves in a desperate attempt to gain fame and fortune. But there is one corrupted individual in this niche who doesn't seem to have these motivations at all, with that person being none other than the infamous troll Frank Hassel.
He said he was gonna shoot me.
Come on, you f***ing see what's the deal?
Are people allowed to threaten to shoot people at the mall?
This guy was stealing and doing gay stuff to people.
I just want to wipe you down, man. You're sweaty.
From almost getting arrested numerous times to being banned from YouTube entirely, it seems that Frank harasses people purely for comedic purposes, constantly pushing things to the extreme and overstepping every single line imaginable in the process. While other pranksters filmed under the guise of making social experiments or lighthearted goofs, Frank embraced the negative stereotypes, which was refreshing in the oddest of ways. He deconstructed the genre down to its purest form, revealing how cruel messing with people just trying to live their lives truly could be. Whether he has done this intentionally is another question, and regardless, in the process, he has become reviled. Most creators who do what Frank does are unequivocally shunned by the broader internet, but Frank is unique in the sense that he is seemingly just as beloved by his fanbase as he is hated by his detractors. Despite this infamy though, nobody seems to have taken the time or effort to give a comprehensive breakdown of his wildest moments, or even how he got to where he is now. After watching through hours of his content as well as interviews, I stumbled across a lot of surprising information that most people seem to be unaware of. He is more than just the guy who got shot at by Boogie. But before we explain his most infamous encounters, we have to delve into this villain's origin story. But before we go any further in today's video, I'd just like to give a shout out to my sponsor Morgan & Morgan, America's largest personal injury law firm. I'm sure everyone has seen the headlines of a person being hit by a car and receiving a multi-million-dollar settlement due to the negligence on the driver's part. But what you might not think about are the teams behind the wronged that fight to get them the compensation they deserve, such as Morgan & Morgan. Sure, there are plenty of law firms out there that will advertise this service, but many don't have the teams needed to take on multi-million-dollar cases. And even to find out, you'll have to call them, leave a message, hope they call you back, and set up a consultation in the future. The great thing about Morgan & Morgan is you can submit your case through their website without talking to anyone, with you receiving a prompt response from a professional that can help you no matter how big the case if you become their client. This has led them to winning clients sums in the tens of millions, such as $12 million in Florida, 34 times the highest insurance offer, and $26 million in Philadelphia, 40 times the highest insurance offer. And the best part is, their lawyers are absolutely free unless they win you money. You can start your claim now with Morgan & Morgan at www.forthepeople.com/tgfm, found in the description or by scanning the QR code on the screen from your phone's camera. So if you ever get seriously injured, you can reach out to Morgan & Morgan today. Frank's online history dates all the way back a decade, appearing in the 2010s. He got his start in the online space by associating with a video game trolling group called MyGod. This was during the tail end of the golden age of voice chat trolling, where gamers would intentionally provoke people they were playing with into rage quitting. Frank's content fell in line with what you would expect from the era.
He's got a kit. Is he defusing it?
No, he's not defusing it. He's just sitting there watching the f***ing thing. Oh my god, dude.
This would eventually lead to a revelation. Why stick to trolling people in video games when you could bring it into the real world?
It got to a point where I was, it was like maybe I could do this in real life.
While he was notable within a small niche, Frank was a relatively unknown figure in the broader online community. But this would change after he decided to prank a local news outlet. You see, in 2015, a man named Vester Lee Flanagan gunned down and murdered 2 journalists after being fired from his job at the news station they worked at. While most looked at the situation as a tragedy, Frank saw an opportunity. After getting in contact with the news station WSB-TV, he wildly claimed Vester was a member of his online gaming group called Gamergate, using photoshopped screenshots to prove his legitimacy to the unsuspecting reporter.
Gamer, do you want to play CSGO? Flanagan, not right now, I'm kinda out of it. Gamer, why? Flanagan, I can't get WDBJ out of my mind. I have a strong dislike of those people. Gamer, dude, we've talked about this before. Just let it go. It's not a big deal.
His story was apparently so convincing that he even managed to secure an interview with the station where he continued to spew even more blatant lies.
There's also this other guy who frequently bullied Bryce, I guess is the right way to say it. His name was Sam Hyde. He was a member of an online group called $1 Million Extreme.
The story was uploaded online soon after and quickly garnered attention due to the sheer ridiculousness of it. It was obvious the news station wanted to be the first ones to get their hands on a new piece of information nobody else had, but had unwittingly fallen into the hands of an internet troll.
She thought she had like the story of the century, like,
Right.
wow, this is gonna make my career or whatever.
Yeah. Now
And
she
it's
probably
like,
works in
oh.
a brothel.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's been
Now
shamed out of the industry.
Now she's doing stories about like the water skiing squirrel or whatever.
It highlighted the disconnect between traditional media and internet culture, and even ended up catching the attention of Sam Hyde himself. The comedian was so impressed by the stunt that he offered Frank the gig of a lifetime. He would pay him to film himself hassling people in public, incorporating the pranks into his Gumroad exclusive show, Happy World Daddy. Frank also ended up doing various other odd things for him.
I ran the MDE Twitter account before it got banned for anti-Semitic comments that weren't posted by myself.
It was like years later. I did like a lot of like administrative work for him, and I like answered like fan mail and shit.
After moving to Providence, Rhode Island to work with the MDE team, he began filming various stunts over the next few years. One infamous example of this is when he went Christmas caroling alongside Sam himself.
Would you like to hear some caroling?
No.
Why?
Because I don't think you guys can sing.
Another notable bit was when he harassed the employees of yet another local news outlet, only identifying himself as Chad King.
Can I team up with this old bald fellow over here? Can I team up with you, man?
This is a pseudonym that Frank often uses during his hassles, being derived from the fact that he is the self-proclaimed King of the Chads. This would continue for a while, with Frank seemingly enjoying getting paid to do what he did best, hassling unsuspecting bystanders. However, there was just one issue. Sam intended to use only a small percentage of the footage Frank shot, meaning he was sitting upon hours and hours of unedited content that would never see the light of day. This would change when his exclusivity contract with $1 Million Extreme ended, with him now being free to use the raw footage in any way he saw fit. Seeing an opportunity, Frank started uploading to his YouTube channel more regularly in early 2020. Most of these were longer versions of previous hassles that included never-before-seen footage, now being edited by people he commissioned himself. In light of the COVID pandemic, he also began posting online hassles, where he would troll the participants of Zoom meetings as well as random streamers.
You know what helps me wake up? Is hardcore gay pornography.
Oh.
Hardcore gay helps me wake up.
I'm in LA, just chilling out, trying to have a really
Very
good-
nice.
Hopefully.
I'm enjoying some hardcore gay pornography.
Oh, put that down. Close.
Right now. No, hardcore gay.
As you might expect, this didn't last long, with his channel being banned in August of that same year for reasons we'll get to later on. While he has tried to return several times, they were not nearly as successful as his initial run. This ultimately didn't matter too much since Frank has always been more interested in driving traffic to his Gumroad page, where fans can access his entire back catalog of uncensored content for $5 a month. This has always been his main revenue stream, and because of that fact, he has never had to tone down his content for mainstream platforms. Before we get into explaining the contents of some of these videos, I would like to delve into an interesting audio memo created by Frank himself. In it, he describes the methodology behind his hassling.
People have asked me how I do the things that I do, the methodology that goes into it, the thought process, how I manage to keep a straight face, how I don't, I don't think I've ever broken when I've filmed something in terms of like laughing or anything like that.
He states that at the beginning of his career, he often walked around with a clipboard with various different questions meant to provoke people, before evolving to a point where he didn't need it. He also elaborates on what he feels constitutes a funny bit.
Well, I try to come up with something funny and then hit it 4, 5, 6 times, try to hit it in different tones, different ways, just to see how people react to it, see how it goes.
The interesting thing was that he would later discuss how he at first was actually very shy.
When Sam first hit me up about making this stuff, I was like, oh man, I'm kind of socially awkward. I don't like talking to strangers when I go out. So I would just be in the bathroom shotgunning like Heineken's.
It's hard to imagine this being the case considering how infamous he would later become for keeping his cool in the face of violence. One thing about Frank that's also important to note is that he's quite tall, usually towering over the people he's hassling. He's acknowledged on occasion that this is most likely the reason he's able to get away with so much without being attacked.
My size is definitely, I'm 6'3". My size is like helpful.
Would you do this if you were like 5'4"?
No, I'd probably get my ass kicked.
In this interview, he also talks about what his limits were, if you could even call them that.
Too far for me is like, I don't want to with people who have kids. I don't want to with handicapped people. Like, that's really it for me. Like, this supremely elderly,
Whether he has always abided by this code is debatable, to say the least. I would like to clarify before we get too deep into the section that I will not be going over these videos in any particular chronological order. Mostly due to the fact it's a bit difficult to ascertain exactly when certain videos were filmed and released. With this context out of the way, I figured it would be a good idea to go through some of the most absurd videos in his catalog. One of the main things that differentiates Frank from your average prankster is his insistence. You see, there are a few beloved YouTubers out there that have pulled stunts in public, like when Filthy Frank terrorized unwitting civilians as Pink Eye.
Have you seen an alien, please? Have you seen a ship? Please! Please! Please!
Even TV personalities such as Eric Andre have built up a reputation for making people uncomfortable in public. But the key here is that the joke is usually on themselves, with the bit being how normal people react to weird situations, and once the cameras are off, they leave. Frank Hassel, meanwhile, will target one individual and drive them over the edge, with one of the best examples of this being the Food Court King. The episode begins with Frank sitting down at a random food court table with two elderly strangers. The seat was already taken by their adult son, who asks him to leave. Of course, the hassler refused. After only 30 seconds, the man grew so angry that he threatened Frank with violence.
I'll shoot your ass.
You're gonna shoot me?
Yeah.
With what?
With my gun.
Where is it?
You wanna leave?
You gonna pull out your tool on me, man?
Despite being told to leave multiple times, Frank continued to provoke them, repeatedly claiming that he was a veteran, which would become a continuous part of his character's lore.
There's a seat right there.
No, he's right there. You don't know. Get out.
I'm a veteran.
Why don't you want? Get out of our
I'm a sovereign citizen.
The man who initially threatened him repeatedly stated that he would beat Frank up. The hassler didn't take this lying down, however, making it clear he would defend himself if he was put into a self-defense situation.
I'm a veteran, man.
What you want?
I know gun katana and Krav Maga. Take you to the ground.
The older gentleman seated at the table then called security. After another minute of arguing, a mall cop was brought over who tried to calm everyone down. Sensing that he was potentially in trouble, he latched onto the fact that he had been threatened, using it to deflect criticism.
I just sat down for a second and he threatened to shoot me. He said he was going to shoot me with a gun and then he threatened to punch me.
What are you here for?
I just sat down for a second.
In my seat, dumbass.
Whoa, what's wrong with him? Whoa, man. He's getting violent. I didn't disrespect your mom. You threatened to shoot me. I'm not even near you.
This is a common tactic Mr. Hassel uses to try and keep himself out of trouble. While he will be antagonistic when authorities aren't present, as soon as they arrive, he will concoct a narrative to suit his needs by twisting his target's words around and gaslighting them into believing he hadn't done anything wrong.
I was just sitting down for a second. No. I didn't know it was his seat. You can't do that, sir. I just sat down. You cannot sit down. He threatened to shoot me. He said he was going to shoot me. Are people allowed to threaten to shoot people at the mall?
Did you sit down in that man's seat?
So he can threaten to shoot me if I sit in his seat?
The filming concludes after another officer is brought in, but that's not where it ends. The Food Court King is notable because it's one of the few hassles that has an associated director's commentary style audio log, where he explains the context of what was happening. He also reveals that after the camera stopped rolling, he was banned from the mall by the officers, which he found amusing. As he explained, this was one of his earliest hassles, with the YouTuber still getting a feel for how to get away with it. He would eventually get more comfortable, as you can plainly see in the next hassle we'll discuss. As you probably already know, 2020 was one of the most politically charged years in recent memory. In addition to the global pandemic, the American government had to contend with the killing of George Floyd. The incident sparked a national debate about police brutality, with massive protests and riots breaking out all across the country. Frank saw an opportunity in the chaos, capitalizing on the tense political climate in Chad King Riot Rumble. In it, he attends a Black Lives Matter protest that took place in Atlanta, Georgia in late May. The video begins with several police reports discussing the protests, then cuts to various different clips Frank filmed of the unruly crowd.
I don't think he looks gay.
However, the majority of the video is spent focusing on Frank's interactions with another creator called Peachy Rider. She was live streaming the entire event on her YouTube channel, with most of her streams still being visible to this day. Frank spliced in the footage she captured with his own, creating a dual narrative. While intending to capture the protests in a journalistic manner, she would unfortunately become his next victim. Throughout the entire video, he followed her around, shoehorning himself in front of her camera whenever he could, often waving a hot dog around. He also accused her of being homophobic and racist numerous times, with the woman becoming more and more angry as events progressed. After protesters began throwing various objects at the police, tear gas was employed, a development Frank couldn't be more enthusiastic about. This would change after Frank ended up getting hit with tear gas himself. He eventually recovered after being given water and got distracted after he witnessed a horse barreling through the street. After reorienting himself, he went back to tormenting Peachy Rider, referring to himself as Chad King.
Chad King, I just got tear gas.
Get the away from me!
We just got tear gas because Peachy Rider said the N-word to a police officer.
A man approached and tried to help, but also fell victim to his hassling. After throwing a hot dog chunk at her head, she pulled out a knife. Mr. Hassel jumped at this opportunity, goading her into trying to stab him. Frank then turned the unruly crowd against her by proclaiming that she had a weapon at the top of his lungs.
She's got a knife! She's got a knife! She's got a knife! She just pulled a knife!
He was later confronted by several protesters who called him out for his harassment of Peachy Rider, accusing him of being an infiltrator.
This is an infiltrator! This is an infiltrator!
The video ends off with a clip of Peachy getting arrested by police, with him getting away scot-free. This is a common theme throughout his content, as most of his videos end off without him facing any real consequences. This alleged injustice leads to frustration from many online users who write comments to Frank such as, "Whoa, I really want to fucking punch this guy in the face. He's a fucking goof. Come up to Canada and try that shit. I'll shove your head up your ass, ignorant bitch. I hope someone smashes his teeth in." There's several problems here, but he isn't the main one. The main problem are those who find this funny and fund his channel. He's literally earning money by being a complete fuckwit. Another problem here is that there's nobody knocking him the fuck out. This would become another ongoing joke in Frank's community. Frank would aggressively hassle someone in public, and then internet tough guys would act like if they were there, they would beat him up. Chad King Riot Rumble wouldn't be the only video where Frank displayed an affinity for hot dogs though, as seen in Hot Dog Heroes. The short 3-minute long clip starts with Frank and an associate asking a random passerby whether he had dropped a package of hot dogs. While most would simply brush this off and continue walking, the man became heated as Frank started to goad him further and further.
Are those your dogs?
Dude, I'm telling you, don't say it again.
Are those your dogs?
Come on. Respect.
Come on. Let's chill, man. Let's get out of here, pussy boy.
Dude, stop pissing him off, man. Why are you pissing him off?
This seemed to be the end of the encounter until Frank calls him a bitch, sending the man into a blind rage.
Yo.
Get him. Whoa. Calm down, man. Hey.
After being attacked, Frank and his crew hopped into their getaway vehicle and drove away, escaping unscathed. As you might have guessed, acts of violence were a consistent part of his content, with him often taking beatings from his targets. One of the most infamous times this occurred was with CrossFit violence. The video starts with Frank attempting to enter into a CrossFit gym and being confronted by one of the coaches. She explained he would have to get a membership before working out, but he flat out refused, stating he just wanted to start lifting weights so he could, quote, get pussy. He then repeated this to various other patrons, including a teenager.
I'm here to get pussy, man. I want to get jacked. Fucking smash some gash.
This is when the actual owner of the gym stepped out to talk to the self-proclaimed diabetic. At first, it started off friendly, with the man believing Frank was there because he wanted to start taking classes. This was soon revealed to not be the case when Frank offered to wipe the man down with a towel.
Let me wipe you off, man. I got a towel. Man. Let me wipe you off. Stop. Why can't I wipe you down, man? Look.
If you're here for a joke, for real though. You really want to do this, you're just here.
I just want to wipe you down, man. You're sweaty.
This is when several other patrons confronted Mr. Hassel, defending the doorway of the establishment as the gym's owners called the police. Sensing that he was in trouble, Frank began running away, literally escaping into the woods. This wouldn't be the end, as he would return a few days later. This is when things took a much more serious turn, as the gym owner immediately recognized him. They exchanged words before he attempted to enter the facility through the back door. This sent the owner into a frenzy, forcefully removing him from the property and pinning him to a fence.
There are children in there.
I'm gonna get
Stop it.
pussy, bitch.
Stop.
I'm gonna get pussy, man.
Stop.
I'm gonna get pussy, man.
I'm gonna break your
get
camera.
Crazy,
Don't
man.
do this.
I'm gonna get crazy, man.
What?
You can't hold me
yes,
down.
Yes, I can. The cops told me to call.
What is this guy doing, man?
Once Frank got up, another CrossFit associate came out to assist, forcefully leading him away from the business while debating him on the legality of what had happened.
Don't ever walk in there. Don't ever do that to anyone ever.
That guy's not allowed to assault me, man.
This went on for a while, with Frank getting pushed further and further down the road. The video ends off with him walking off into the sunset, finally admitting defeat. Interestingly, once he posted the video to YouTube, the people involved discovered it and filed a privacy complaint, which temporarily got his channel taken down, though he would return to the platform soon after. He would later reflect on the incident in an interview, revealing that his fans had started to review bomb the business soon after the video's release.
Yeah.
And he just sends me whiny emails saying, like, people are leaving bad reviews of my business. Can you ask them to stop? And it's like, bro, if I ask anybody to stop doing anything, that's not going to make them stop.
This would be short-lived, though, as the incident that arguably got him permanently banned from the platform would take place later that same year, with the ensuing controversy launching him into the mainstream. Now, some of you that are watching may have noticed that up until this point, I've neglected to give detail about one extremely important hassle from 2020. That being his infamous encounter with Boogie2988. Chances are if you're watching this video, you already know the details. I even created a video at the time covering it all, but regardless, I figured that it would be a good idea to give another rundown of the situation here. The story began when Frank antagonized Boogie, who used to be known as the Mr. Rogers of YouTube, at one point sending very strange messages to him. If you do plan to harm, just to leave my friends and my dog out of it, you are welcome to kill me. We should make a video together where I give you a pink belly until your stomach has friction burns. I would be glad to do that as long as you promise you don't mean me or my family any harm. I don't know if you're actually crazy or just pulling some Andy Kaufman shtick, but if it's the latter, I would be glad to participate in. If it's alright, my life is awful enough without your help. So I would appreciate it if you can maybe just let me suffer without it. I get that I am an easy target, but if you have any empathy at all, dude, pick another. I don't. I'm a sociopath. I'm demented and sick. The old school YouTuber did not respond well to this. Instead of simply blocking the troll, he attempted to rope Frank into doing some sort of scripted content, an offer that was refused. Things began to escalate further after the two appeared on the kill stream later that same month, with Boogie listing all the horrible things that would happen to Frank if he decided to show up at his house.
You come to Arkansas, motherfuckers.
Frank said he's coming to your house and he's gonna walk you
I
around
won't
the
even have to
neighborhood.
lift a finger. My neighborhood.
He's gonna put the leash on you and walk you around like a
I'm gonna put your badass.
Will help me bury you.
He said he's gonna. You're gonna lose that weight one way or the other.
Go right ahead, man.
It didn't help that Frank's YouTube channel was banned soon after this on August 15th, with him believing Boogie had been involved in some way. Over the next month or so, the internet troll would continue to torment him, but things really kicked off when Frank posted a photo of himself in Boogie's hometown in Arkansas. He would later claim in several interviews that he had actually flown in just to see a friend of his, though whether that's actually the case is debatable.
I was actually not in town to bother Boogie. I flew in to visit a friend, and I thought, while I'm here, it would be really funny to do this.
So that's what I told Boogie.
However, his online hassling of Boogie had apparently inspired copycats who wanted to get a piece of the glory for themselves. Shortly thereafter, Boogie posted footage from his security camera that showed an individual walking up and ringing his doorbell stating, "This man-child actually rang my doorbell and ran. You literally can't be more juvenile. Didn't even have the balls to wait for me to answer. LMAO." The obvious implication was that this was Frank's doing, though that actually wasn't the case as he flat out denied having involvement with this individual. Good old Keemstar witnessed all of these events unfolding and decided to interview both of the feuding creators on his show Drama Alert. Boogie would become even more overtly antagonistic here, flat out encouraging Frank to show up, claiming he would shoot him on sight.
All right, well, cool, man. Let me make it very clear. You should be very glad you didn't step on my property, okay? And I highly recommend you don't. It'll be the last decision you fucking make. Okay, I've played around with you. I don't know what your obsession is with me. I don't know why you think I got your YouTube channel deleted. I don't know if it's because you're mad I got your subreddit deleted. I don't know who you are. I don't know what your fucking problem is. But I have no problem fucking ending you if you fucking come here. Okay?
What happened next would become internet history. On September 28th, 2020, Frank posted several tweets showing himself standing in front of Boogie's house, alongside a photo of the formerly beloved gaming YouTuber pointing a gun directly at him. This quickly went viral, with countless memes being created at Boogie's expense. And at first, people including myself thought that this was all staged. The rotund YouTuber retaliated by giving his side of events in a video titled, "Confronting a Stalker, Do Not Come to a YouTuber's House." In it, he gave more context on the events that led up to the confrontation, though he strangely did not mention provoking Frank on Drama Alert. Instead, he includes a snippet of Frank at his front door steps, with it being captured by his security doorbell. He doesn't include the full thing though, claiming that he was unable to do so because of YouTube's terms of service. He ended off by reflecting on how the incident was indicative of a larger harassment problem on the platform.
He's very lucky that I was able to keep my mind in check and not defend myself and instead fire a warning shot. And this is why we need to, as a community, condemn this kind of behavior.
Looking back on archives of when it was first released, the general public actually sided with Boogie, with many of the comments being sympathetic and the upload having a positive like-to-dislike ratio. While it's hard to imagine nowadays, Boogie had not completely tanked his reputation at this point, with the situation giving him an opportunity to hit back at his critics. That's not to say what Frank did should have been socially acceptable, but at the same time, firing a loaded gun in a residential neighborhood is not something that should have been justified by anyone. Frank would later upload his POV of the standoff called the Hassle Doctrine.
Come on, you fucking pussy, what's the deal? Where's the gun at, you fat faggot? Open fire!
This honestly should have been where it ended. Most rational people would simply choose not to open the door and give the internet troll the satisfaction of being able to torment them. However, as you probably already know, Boogie chose a completely different route.
You are not welcome here. You have threatened my life. I'm asking you to leave. In about 30 seconds, I'm going to fire a warning shot.
Fire it now! Okay. Fire the warning shot now!
Shockingly, Frank was completely unfazed when presented by the sight of Boogie holding a firearm, possibly due to his military service, instead laughing at the homeowner and continuing to provoke him even after the warning shot was fired. He did eventually walk away, but not before using some colorful language.
Hey, leave the property. Go.
Yourself, n***er.
Go. What the f***? That's the language you use?
After being posted online, this video became iconic, with the surrounding controversy escaping into broader internet discourse. Frank instantly went from a niche figure to one of the most notorious trolls on the internet, being characterized as a psychopathic stalker by other creators who weighed in on the situation.
They think that this is cool and funny, but it's not. This situation is so messed up, and Boogie honestly does not deserve this type of harassment.
It was even covered in news outlets such as Business Insider and Vice. The latter contained comments from a phone call interview they conducted with Boogie himself, who stated, "I think, in retrospect, it was a mistake to open the door. You know, I certainly do not want to shoot anybody. I certainly absolutely do not want to kill anybody. I hate that I was put in that situation." When they reached out to Frank for comment, he replied by sending them a photo of feces in a toilet. While police did get involved, it was actually Boogie who would end up being on the wrong end of the law here. You see, the Arkansas Castle Doctrine is only able to be used as a legal defense when the person who shot the firearm has a reasonable belief that he was in life-threatening danger. The fact Boogie had fired a warning shot meant that in the eyes of the law, he didn't view Frank as a legitimate threat. This means legally his use of the firearm had been unreasonable, and the fact he lives so close to a school zone... What world am I living in? And the fact he lived so close to a school zone meant that he had unintentionally landed himself into hot water with local authorities. Meanwhile, Frank fled the state, and it seemed like local law enforcement had no need to try to track him down. It's really crazy to think that if Boogie actually shot and killed Frank, he would have a higher chance of getting away with it. It was later revealed on May 11th, 2021 that a warrant had been issued for his arrest for aggravated assault. A local news outlet called KNWA reported on the situation, giving more details regarding the reasoning behind the arrest. According to them, a court document stated that the defendant discharged a firearm into a residential neighborhood, thereby manifesting an extreme indifference to the value of human life and creating a substantial danger of death or physical injury against the peace and dignity of the state of Arkansas. Frank, of course, couldn't resist, figuratively dancing on Boogie's grave by mocking him in several tweets. "I have butt thugs throughout the Arkansas prison system. Booty goons on standby, ready to activate and destroy." A Change.org petition was also started that encouraged the state government to give Boogie the death penalty for his crimes. Boogie would later post a video going over his side of events in June, making it clear that he had been compliant throughout the entire process and that he had been the one to turn himself in. He also stated it was unclear when the case would be officially resolved, but this too would be answered on March 7th, 2022, when he released yet another upload revealing the case had finally been settled. He pointed out that he had faced significant fees dealing with the legal headache, but thanked all of his supporters and stated he would not be facing a prison sentence.
Now, for those of you who have made it this far and you're looking for the specifics, what the judge, my lawyer, and the prosecutor have agreed to here is called deferred adjudication. And basically, it kicks this whole thing down the road for 2 years. And at the end of that 2 years, it's very likely to get 346'd and go away.
While at the time Boogie received widespread support from his fans and the general community, this goodwill wouldn't last long, as over the next few years he would face a series of other unrelated controversies that permanently tarnished his reputation, leading some to declare that Frank had won in the end. It goes without saying that Boogie developed a deep-seated hatred of Frank, with him discussing the incident even years later. In April of 2024, he made a tweet claiming that he even had dirt on the Hassler. Now that I am no longer on probation, I can speak freely. I am aware of something Frank had done that the internet, for good reason, will never know about. I can't speak on them publicly, and neither will the other people involved. But the world, or at least a few people, would be better off if I had buried his ass that day. He was later questioned on what exactly he meant by this on an episode of LolCow Live, a show started by Keemstar created with the intention of capitalizing off of the infamy of its hosts.
Since Frank came to my house, I had several people come to me and say, Frank did this to me, Frank did that to me, and I believe these people. And I originally just wanted to out all of that shit. Since the last week's episode, I've had several people say, hey man, don't include me in this shit. I've moved past it. I'm afraid of that motherfucker. I don't have anything to do with him. So just don't bring me back into it. So I thought my process is I've got nothing to say to the guy because I can't say anything.
Keep in mind that these allegations are being made by Boogie, who is by no means a reliable narrator. He was exposed soon after for lying about a cancer diagnosis for over 2 years, leading to massive videos being created about him by other creators. Turkey Tom was brought on to one of the streams discussing this, where he provided more details about Boogie's claims. For context, he had been in the process of creating a documentary about the formerly beloved YouTuber, interviewing him in real life. He also ended up recording an interview with Frank as well, without Boogie's initial knowledge, of course. While filming with Boogie, he dropped the bombshell that he believed Hassel was some sort of abuser, despite admitting he didn't have any proof to show for it. However, it was enough for Tom to become uncomfortable with releasing the project.
He's talked about it before. When he said that Hassel did something to some girl, that drove him over there.
Yeah, and there's another guy out there accusing Frank of that too right now, though.
So I got out. There was more than that. It was like he beat a girl, and then he also would like dated someone underage or was flirting with someone underage. It was a whole thing.
These allegations have not been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt, with time only being able to tell how legitimate they actually are. This is essentially where the feud between the two creators ended off, and soon after the incident occurred, Frank once again ramped up production, releasing what is arguably his magnum opus. While Frank released a slew of new uploads in 2021, for the purpose of this video we will only be focusing on one particular called Law & Order Special Needs Unit. This is possibly the highest effort video he has ever released, coming in at a whopping 26 minutes. The episode is framed as a news report discussing Frank's antics around the state of Rhode Island, with an actress taking the role of a news reporter. It is through this lens that we see references to a number of old skits and the different characters he has played. As explained in the video, Frank is a shape-shifting cryptid who attempted to blend in with normal humans by assuming different identities that change depending on the situation.
Documented identities of Frank include a combat veteran, a CDC official, a clinical physician named Wario, and a baby.
Despite attempts to halt his rampage of, quote, mildly inconveniencing low testosterone men, he was unable to be stopped by authorities due to his status as a veteran as well as being an endangered cryptid. This is where the introduction ends, with the rest of the video being a tutorial on what to do if you encounter this dangerous individual. The Hassel lore is an aspect of his content I don't see many people discuss. While it may seem that the majority of his videos are just him bothering people, which is true, most of them also offer an overarching narrative that's related to his fictional universe in some way. Sometimes these are just small references, such as him referring to his GoPro camera as an insulin pump.
Is what?
Insulin pump.
Get out of here.
I got diabetes.
But other times, it's an intrinsic part of the content, like parading around as Dr. Don Wario, trying to give his patients estrogen at the supermarket to hypnotize them into becoming sissified bimbos.
You want to turn into a nice, sexy little lady. Yeah? Does that work? Is that doing anything for you? Have you been taking your estrogen? I'm Dr. Don Wario.
I need to keep on making it clear that I'm not trying to excuse the nature of these videos, but you do have to admit it's a lot more effort than one might expect. Snapping back to reality for a moment, the actual content of the upload features Frank attempting to rile people up at a store. His method of doing this was unorthodox, to say the least.
So it is you.
Maybe.
The guy who raped me in my dream.
One of the good ones.
The stuff is mine now.
You got a shopping cart in the berries.
No, I'm good. You could just give me the cart. Okay, don't tattle on me, okay? Okay, thank you.
Jumping back to the lore, the reporter goes on to highlight how this was the perfect way to deal with Frank's antics, comparing him to a wild animal that reacts poorly to shouting. While the first man had been able to roll with the punches, the second victim Frank chose was not so forgiving. In fact, this is the closest call with authorities the Hassler has ever come, with this particular bit escalating so far that he was almost arrested.
So it is you. Who are you? You're the guy who raped me in my dream. An angel told me I would meet you here.
He continues to follow the man outside the aisle, but not before receiving a message from the angel, who claimed he had seen the future and that he would be arrested if he didn't leave the store immediately. When the victim went up to the customer service counter, Frank acted as though nothing was wrong. The woman didn't buy it, however, and began calling for backup. Hassel continued to provoke the man, stealing his hat in the process. This is when the manager came out and instructed the employee to call the police. Frank tried his usual tactic of gaslighting his victim and pretending that he had done nothing wrong. This worked at first, but they began to grow suspicious when he began walking away.
Yeah, we can watch it.
Sure.
Okay. Good. Okay, later.
He tried to escape, but was unsuccessful as he was soon confronted by a police officer. This is when he immediately drops any pretense of being a troll and fully admits that he had been filming a video, even stating that he had, in fact, been accusing the man of assaulting him in his dreams. He began interrogating Frank about what had happened, then proceeded to place him in handcuffs, stating that he was temporarily being detained. Interestingly, this is also when we get a brief glimpse into how much money there was to be made in hassling.
I have subscribers that pay $5 a month to watch my videos.
Okay. Okay. About how many people?
I'm making like $grand a month.
Okay.
Which is pretty good money.
I mean, it is decent money.
The police officer called in a manager, clearly unsure of what to do with him. The next part of the video is the cop talking to Frank, trying to see if he had actually done anything illegal. It turns out the only smoking gun the police officers had was that he took off the man's hat at one point. With this, he was given a criminal trespass warning and was told that while he was not being arrested at the moment, a warrant was being put out for his arrest. This ended with Frank calling his getaway driver, with him as usual escaping into the night unscathed. He soon after left the state he was in, and as far as I can tell, that warrant is still out for his arrest. The reason I focus so much on this video is because it encapsulates everything people simultaneously love and hate about his content. It includes harassment, fancy editing, and a brush with the law. Despite the drama he faced in real life, however, the year was mostly clear from brush-ins with other content creators. But this would soon change. For context to this next skirmish, in February of 2022, the YouTuber Matt Jarbo, most notable for starting Gamergate, hosted a live debate between the previously mentioned Ethan Ralph and beloved troll Mr. Medicare. Both of these online provocateurs laid the groundwork for internet blood sports, a community defined by constant infighting and heated debates that often take place during live streams. While the lore surrounding the community is worthy of its own video, the only thing you need to understand is that this debate was a huge deal when it happened. At one point, Medicare brought up an internet feud between Ethan Ralph and a man named Jesse P., who ran the self-proclaimed anti-podcast Pod Awful. Jesse had previously appeared on the Kino Casino YouTube channel during a stream dedicated to hating Ethan Ralph, at one point delivering a box of diapers to his house. The next morning, Ralph awoke to find that corn cobs had been dropped off at his front door. Ethan maintained that what had happened was harassment that frightened his fiancée, which led Medicare to accuse him of hypocrisy for his previous stance on the Boogie situation.
And then Ralph, I guess the other question related to this, and this is an honest one.
You
promoted the Frank Castle and Boogie thing.
No.
You promoted the Frank Castle and Boogie thing as being based in Red Pill.
I'll let you ask whatever.
Okay.
After Medicare and Ralph had finished their debate, Jarbo decided to keep the stream going and invited various other members of the community to join in. This, of course, included Frank Castle. Flamenco, another streamer, also brought up Pod Awful's feud with Ethan Ralph. Recognizing the name, Frank decided to chime in with his own 2 cents.
That Pod Awful guy is a freak, though.
Yeah.
In Ralph's defense, that guy is also a total psycho freak.
At first, it wasn't exactly clear why he felt this way, but this would soon be answered when Jesse later joined the call and confronted Frank about it directly.
I was friends with this mentally disabled guy on Facebook like 5 or 6 years ago, and he like harassed the guy and like tried to get him to come on the stream all the time and was like,
who was that?
Like abusing a mentally retarded guy.
Who was that?
Again.
What was his name?
Brian Fortune.
Brian Allen Fortune? I'm still friends with him. I talk to him all the time.
No, his whole family had to block you because you were like messaging his mom.
I'm friends with him right now.
Jesse wouldn't take this lying down, however, and went on to record an episode of Pod Awful where he responded to the allegations and set the record straight on his relationship with Frank Castle. In the description, he states, "I've learned the error of my ways, and it is time to apologize to everyone. Somehow, this now includes names I never thought it would before, like Frank Castle. But most importantly of all, I owe an apology to a man I wronged many years ago, a man named Brian Allen Fortune." During the episode, Jesse contests the narrative that he harassed this Mr. Brian Fortune fellow, and actually accused Frank of being the one who bullied him. He has a call with Brian, who gives a different side of events.
Frank paid you $100 because you showed your dick, or?
Yeah. I was like, really?
That's kind of gay of him.
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of weird.
You pay a guy to show his penis. That makes you like a gay guy.
This video never came out for one reason or another, with the recorded footage being private to this very day. It's important to emphasize that this is all alleged, with the only definitive proof of it even happening being hearsay. And while the two had it out for each other, they seemingly came to a resolution later on, with Frank even appearing on an episode of Pod Awful. They bonded over their shared interest in a streamer named Mersh, another member of the blood sports community. They discussed how they eventually came to an understanding and elaborated more on what the actual story was with this Brian guy.
Anyway, the point is, we cleared all this in this very long phone call. We cleared all this stuff up where we both realized, no, we both like Brian. We both have fucked with Brian probably too hard.
At the end of the day, we may never know the full story here, but retrospectively, it seems like the drama between the two was never really that serious. Regardless, it serves as yet another interesting feud he had with someone outside of the context of his videos. The rest of the year continued on as normal, with the infamous troll releasing even more content. Before we dive into his next video, I do want to make a note of something. While the previous few years had been a roller coaster of stakes that constantly became higher and higher, it seemed that Frank was getting sick of this and slowed down the production of content by quite a bit. 2 of the videos from this year were episodes of his podcast, Mental Hell Online, and another was just a re-upload of some old footage of his trolling in Counter-Strike. He also released a mega compilation of his online trolls, with the other videos being more standard. The first of these that we will be discussing is framed as an employee training video for a company called Secure Protection United, with Frank venturing into a grocery store yet again to mess with shoppers. The intro to the video introduces SPU and is divided up into different modules, with the first being a visual assessment. Frank, now posing as an SPU agent wearing a Walmart uniform, uses a simple grid system to determine whether a customer is deserving of discrimination. As it happens, the first man he approaches fits neatly into his box. He approaches claiming he's with asset protection and demands to see the man's ID. He then makes a strange accusation.
Can I see your ID, please?
No.
What do you mean?
No.
Are those women's pants?
No.
Did you come in here and steal women's pants?
He attempts to walk away, but Frank refuses to let him, following him around and telling him he has crazy gay eyes, and that he has a lot of nerve walking around wearing women's clothing. This is when the man begins running as the situation escalates, with Frank continuing to follow him around, although the footage cuts soon after. He then moves on to another customer, who shockingly complies with his commands, at least at first.
Could you pull out your ID, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure.
Could you put your hands out, too?
Yeah.
What is that?
Probably the zippers on my pants.
Okay, we're getting a weird reading right there. What's up with that?
Frank takes an intentionally provocative position, stating he was the supervisor and that he needed to see his ID. He makes the man more and more agitated as he tells him he has a serious attitude problem, and continues to follow him around. This is when the man attempts to alert an actual employee, which is when the SPU agent makes his escape. He then returns in order to apprehend 2 more suspects. He goes through the same rigmarole as before, with these individuals also complying at first. However, they soon became suspicious as Frank becomes more and more antagonistic.
You're not putting my shit on YouTube.
Oh, I am.
You're not.
I am.
Right now.
I'm going to.
I'm calling my lawyer.
You're going to be on YouTube? Because you've been stealing from Walmart.
He then attempts to leave the store, but is followed by the agitated customer, who he then accuses of stealing and doing gay stuff.
How's it going? This guy was stealing and doing gay stuff to people. Tried to suck a guy's cock in one of the aisles.
Frank then escapes with the assistance of his getaway driver, flipping off the man and once again escaping into the sunset. This would not be the only time that year that he would visit a Walmart in an effort to get a rise out of unsuspecting victims, next doing so in December. The premise is him approaching patrons and stealing items from their cart, claiming he needed them for his charity, Toys for Tards. This hassle is notable for just how upset this act makes people, with many immediately becoming upset only seconds into their encounter.
Well, there's not enough. There's not enough. Whoa, what are you doing? What are you doing? Hey, chill. It's for the children.
The two continue to scuffle before being seen by another man. Frank immediately begins gaslighting his victim, claiming that he had been the one stealing items from his cart.
You sound completely crazy. Just let me get my stuff back and we can resolve this situation amicably.
Roll this guy. Look, go.
I'm allowed to walk right here. You're assaulting me.
Footage continues to show the man desperately shoving the hassler away, but to no avail. Frank continues to accuse him of hating disabled children and refusing to walk away. The man then approaches an employee to ask for help, with Frank employing yet another gaslighting tactic to get out of trouble.
He was hitting on me in the aisle over there. He was being weird and sexual. He was being gay. He was doing gay stuff with me.
He soon leaves after realizing the employee might actually call security, but this obviously isn't where the story ends. The video continues with a brief intermission claiming the charity Toys for Tards now had a partnership with Walmart, where an elf would commandeer goods from customers' carts in the name of charity. It goes without saying that this elf would do anything but spread holiday cheer.
I'm an elf with the Toys for Tards program. I need to requisition some of the stuff.
What's wrong? Hey, what are you doing?
Huh, I'm requisitioning the stuff for Toys for... You're gonna get coal.
Whatever. Dude, what are you doing?
You're getting
man?
coal, dude.
Aside from the ridiculous premise, it's odd how quickly this action set people off. Most of the time, it takes several minutes to get people to freak out at him, but in this scenario, Frank pushes them past their limit almost immediately. He continues to follow this man around, employing the same tactics as before, accusing him of being a homosexual. He then justifies his actions by once again referring to himself as an elf.
What did I do? I'm an elf.
Hey, man. I need to handle this.
What?
You know what you're doing. You know what you're doing.
I don't know what he's talking about.
I got a game with a camera.
I got a game with a camera?
Everything in my car, then he goes to step on my shoes and play games.
I think he's drunk. He was. I was back there, and he was accosting me.
One aspect of this hassle that's so insidious is that the employees are clearly unprepared for this kind of behavior. He then approaches another man he refers to as Patrice O'Neill, but this time the victim actually gives up his items willingly in an effort to get Frank to back off. This doesn't dissuade the hassler, though, as he continues following the man around the store, until he finally accepts his victory and walks away with the victim's cart. The video ends off with a surprisingly innocuous interaction with another man, with him not realizing how lucky he was to not become a target.
What are you buying?
I'm trying to find the clear part of your thing.
What are you using it for?
I can hurt some shelves.
That's cool. Well, here's your stuff. I'm just being silly. I'm just being silly, man. Hey, man. Have a good one.
This is essentially where 2022 ends. As stated before, this year wasn't nearly as crazy as others. While he had gotten into an online scuffle and engaged in his usual harassment, it didn't have any career-altering moments as there had been in 2020. While it seemed his influence was winding down, this would soon change the following year, with him setting his sights on a much more famous target than Boogie. Ronnie Radke is the lead singer of the extremely popular band Falling in Reverse. He's a controversial figure in his own right and in all honesty deserving of his very own video. The only context you need to know right now though is that he has a habit of responding to random critics on social media, no matter how small of an account they are. This is where Frank comes into play, intentionally goading the musician and causing him to fall into one of his traps. Unfortunately, the majority of Ronnie's posts regarding the situation have been deleted for reasons that will soon become obvious, and from what I could tell are not archived anywhere that's accessible to me. However, Frank's posts are still visible to this day, with it not being very difficult to piece together the context. "You can't handle me, bro, I promise. Come to Atlanta and we can fight in the parking lot." No response at Ronnie Radke. "You are putting me in a self-defense situation. You are banned from Atlanta." "This guy knows I have butt goblins on standby in Atlanta. He's trying to duck me. Why'd you delete this one? I will sissify you at Ronnie Radke." Things escalated when the two actually began messaging each other back and forth, with Ronnie seemingly having every intention of fighting the disabled veteran in hand-to-hand combat, stating that he would allow Frank backstage access to one of his shows in order for them to do so. "You will end up busted open and pimped out." "Okay, cool, how far is it? Can you make that drive? I have you on the list +5. You are banned from Atlanta." Onlookers chimed in, amused and bewildered that this interaction was even happening at all. Eventually, Ronnie did seem to get the message of what Frank's shtick was, deleting all of his posts regarding him and seemingly calling off the fight. This greatly upset Frank, who proceeded to call him a coward. He would later post an Instagram story discussing the incident.
Seems like Ronald Radke is afraid to meet me in public, and he won't meet me at the park. He won't meet me anywhere in public for the life-changing event. Nothing will ever be the same for Ronald after this.
The conflict between the two settles down after this, though Frank would still reference the drama even months later. This wouldn't be the only hot water he managed to land himself into during this era. In April of 2023, Frank made the most baffling decision ever when he elected to get a crude drawing of the 9/11 terrorist attack on his back. It was created by the artist Tokipar, who posted an image of their work with the caption, #NeverForget, #RestInPeace. While the internet is often known for its love of edgy jokes, this did actually cause a bit of a stir with the images spreading to other communities soon after. It landed him on Reddit's Shitty Tattoos board, which garnered over 3,000 upvotes. I don't care if you're 9 or from North Sentinel Island, but only the most unpleasant person would think that tattoo is a good idea. I don't care if it's humor or some political message. The second you get something like that tattoo, all reasoning goes out the window. No pun intended. "Oh no, that looks real. How the fuck did this happen? I'm guessing certain drugs were involved. With the falling people, that's so fucked up. He's an incel YouTube troll that filmed himself sexually harassing girls and stalking them as a joke, calling cops on random guys by claiming that they are pedophiles, being racist to strangers, etc. Being offensive is his kind of humor. He even began selling shirts with the image plastered onto them starting in June, solidifying his stance that he believed it was, in fact, hilarious. Later in 2023, Sam Hyde debuted his Big Brother-style reality show Fish Tank. It worked by viewers donating money in order for their messages to be read out loud by a live chat bot, similar to the one used by Twitch streamers. There were other incentives as well, such as giving gifts to certain contestants or sounding off random noises. There was one particular goal that many onlookers wanted to reach more than any other. You see, if they donated enough money, then the showrunners would unleash Frank on the contestants, being introduced as a freeloader. The goal was unsurprisingly met on day 23. Once he arrived, the intimidating half-man, half-gorilla quickly began tormenting the contestants, often crossing physical boundaries. On one occasion, he scuffled with a fish named Vance, at one point grabbing hold of him and refusing to let go. One of the most infamous moments was when he decided to hassle another female contestant named Sylvia. It starts off with him refusing to get up from her mattress. While she was amused at first, over the course of the next hour, she would become more and more flustered. He then proceeded to block her path by sitting on the stairwell, refusing to let her get by. The woman was now becoming increasingly frustrated.
Who the f*** does he think he is? F***ing Frank? We swear to God. What who Frank is? Who the f*** is Frank, bro? Who Frank is? Some more followers you can be the bot. I don't give a f***.
Despite this antagonistic attitude, there actually was a surprisingly wholesome moment that occurred during Frank's time in the tank. For those who are unaware, the contestant Airsoft Fatty was brought on by Sam in a stunt that was seen to be a jab at his nemesis iDubbbz. At this point, Fatty was struggling with homelessness and was only on the show because his friend Blaze figured it would be a good idea, as I covered in my documentary on the subject, which you should watch next. It seemed the pressure of not having a place to return to once the show was over got to him, leading to the man breaking down in tears. Instead of harassing him though, Frank decided to comfort the troubled viral star, listening to his struggles and providing him with advice.
You're not worthless, man. You're killing it on here. I would even go so far as to say that you've saved the show. You know, like after John left, they needed somebody to come in here and talk and be active and funny and interesting. And people bust your balls, you know, they give you shit, but that's just for the show. You know, you're doing a great job, man. Seriously, you're doing a good job. You're funny. You're killing it, dude. For real.
You really don't know how much I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Despite this genuinely heartfelt moment, Frank would soon be removed from the show after he continuously destroyed the residents. He was confronted by the producer Jet, who told him he would have to leave. This resulted in a complete meltdown, with Frank then going on a rampage. Despite only being there for a few days, Frank made an incredible impression, with most fans praising him for his performance and hoping they would see more of him in the future. Another aspect of Fish Tank was that while the show was running, a camera crew was on the ground recording footage in high definition. The plan was to compile all of it into a legitimate series, complete with interviews and overarching story narratives. However, when the episodes were released on YouTube, many were disappointed to see that Frank's appearances had been mostly cut out. Enraged, fans criticized Jet on social media, and he soon hopped on a Twitter space with the hassler himself.
I mean, dude, come on. You had a central role in like a beloved episode. Why are you mad? Why are you like putting me on blast that you didn't have more scenes? Shit, dude.
You're
The episode was
like,
over double its normal length, and still shit got regrettably cut. Like that's the
dude, there was, like,
that's the
20
nature of
minutes that
production,
stupid
man.
fucking detective shit that wasn't funny, bro. There was like 20 minutes of that crap. Nobody wants to see that.
Well, Frank, if you want to come
sorry
edit
to
for
break
me
this
60
to you,
hours a
bro, but
week,
this was not the
you want to come edit for me 60 hours a week and make those narrative decisions, be my guest. But you don't. You hire editors.
Yeah, of course.
Okay? All right, then get the fuck out of my face.
While he was incredibly defensive during this debate, Jet would later cave and apologize on stream for his actions. He accepted responsibility and stated he had been overwhelmed by the sheer volume of the project, as well as the steep learning curve in its creation. Despite the rocky relations, Frank would eventually return to the tank later that year when they inevitably aired the second season, being introduced on day 25. Ironically, most of the contestants this time around were even more unhinged, with Frank fitting in perfectly. That doesn't mean he didn't have some standout moments. A couple examples would be when he was covered in vomit and filth by a contestant named Taylor, and encouraged another named Greg to punch him. However, there was one other interesting moment where he ended up harassing an individual he had previously comforted. What needs to be understood is that Airsoft Fatty was also reintroduced this season, now being a staple of the series. At one point, he was attempting to rest, but was disturbed after Frank began kicking the door, waking him up.
Can you stop kicking my fucking head?
This eventually resulted in Fatty losing his cool and freaking out.
I feel a disturbance in the force.
Fuck off! off, dude. I'm leaving.
No.
Get out of my fucking way. I'm leaving.
not moving.
Chap, I want to leave. I want to fucking leave. No, I just got the fucking door. Get to my...
I didn't know that. I wanted to hit your head.
Now, up until this point, you've likely come to the conclusion that Frank is an unstoppable force. His size combined with the unrelenting torment of his victims makes it seem impossible that anyone could outdo him at his own game. However, this changed when Frank was brought on to the third season of Fish Tank in 2024. As with the previous season, there was a lot of expansive lore that could constitute its own video, but I'd like to focus on one particular individual, that being Bert. He is a self-proclaimed actor who quickly became a fan favorite, mostly due to his unique personality.
Now, why did you suspect that I'm Jewish, Bert? What were the clues?
I mean, the obsession with money, fish bucks, poker, tips. That was all. Maybe I didn't mean racist, but like.
That's extremely racist, Bert.
Their conflict started after Bert developed feelings for Frank during filming. The infamous troll leaned into this at first, with the two starting a romantic fling. Unfortunately, Bert ended up taking his attraction a bit too far, sniffing Frank's shoes when he was asleep. Frank later revealed to Bert that he was not actually gay, and that he had just been using him the entire time to do whatever he wanted. Mr. Hassel also had some harsh words regarding the shoe fiasco, making it clear that he thought of him as a degenerate.
And I saw that video of you sniffing my shoe and burning off, and it was disgusting. It made me sick. It's one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life.
And I have to say, it must really mean something when Frank Hassel, out of all people, is calling you a degenerate. It appeared as though the hassler was now the hassled. Bert was, of course, shattered by this news, almost bursting into tears during their conversation. Frank then referred to him as a toy he controlled, more specifically, a chocolate golem. Now considering Frank his sworn enemy, the self-proclaimed actor became enraged, seeking revenge, not just for him, but the contestants that had previously fallen.
I'm gonna do whatever I can to drive you out of my life, out of this house, and I'm gonna see you again. F you. Good luck.
This tension eventually resulted in a physical confrontation between the two. As you know by now, Frank's biggest strength when it came to hassling is his ability to make people feel uncomfortable, sometimes doing so through physical contact. Bert did not have this weakness, however, at one point sticking his hands down his pants and then rubbing them all over his former love interest. This culminated in an intense boxing match, intended to finally settle the score. Even though he was taller, Frank still ended up losing due to Bert's rage, with him furiously throwing out punches the entire time and overwhelming his opponent's defenses. By the end, Frank looked exhausted and defeated, and was kicked off the show by the other contestants the next day. To this very day, it's difficult to understand where the bit ends and begins with Bert. Regardless, after the show ended, he was interviewed by PKA where he came across as much more reasonable, elaborating that he had caught on to Frank's gimmick early on and was just playing it up for entertainment purposes.
Frank, I found him very sexy, still do. But I kind of realized that he was just there just to like f with me or like manipulate me a bit. So I kind of like played into it because I thought that'd be good like love story drama.
To be clear, there doesn't actually seem to be any bad blood between the two, with most of it seemingly being hyped up for the cameras. In the time since, Frank has actually hung out with Bert in real life, showing that he can still roll with the punches. But it still marks one of the few occasions where Frank was genuinely outdone. And that brings us to current-day Frank, who in recent times hasn't been hassling as much in public. Often you'll just see older clips of his that get re-uploaded and spread around to a new audience that don't pay for the Gumroad account for ethical or monetary reasons. That being said, as of writing, he has announced his triumphant return in New York City, with Dr. Don Wario even making an appearance during a live stream. For me, Frank Hassel is the end result of becoming desensitized to regular humor and having to keep on upping the stakes. Worn out by laugh tracks and Hollywood focus group meddling, younger generations have embraced rawer forms of comedy, where the lines become increasingly blurred by what is morally okay to laugh at. Transparently, I for one have chuckled at many of Frank's bits, especially when he does something extremely petty and the other party is the one to overreact. But the thing is, since he's been kicked off of most mainstream social media platforms and gets paid from direct donations, there's really not much to be done to stop him. And because of that, we'll all have to stay on high alert when out in public, or we might be the next person to be hassled.